What's up, everybody? It's Thursday night. That can mean only one very evil, devious thing. It's time for episode 89 of the Geeks with Wives and Capes podcast. Hello, hello. We're excited to be back with you. As always, I'm your host, DarthSparrow, and I'm ready to, see whatever kind of craziness my co-hosts and our guests are ready to sling out to the interwebs and to all of you listeners and followers. So thanks for joining us. As always, I have my panel of esteemed co-hosts, the lady, the one who puts the sassy in this podcast, as well as the beauty and the awesome wigs, Miss Piper Steed. How are you, Piper?
I'm all right. I always have the best hair because I buy it online.
Hey, if that's, you got to do what you got to do to get the best hair, right?
Yeah.
What's new with you, lady? How's the week been?
It's been terrible. But I can laugh about it now because I'm almost done.
Yes.
Oh, God.
You're like finals and stuff, right?
Yeah, finals. Finals for my particular degree isn't as easy as just studying for a test, and I really wish it was because I would prefer tests, honestly.
Right.
But no, it's doing all these massive projects that have to be perfect, and you have to do, in this case, you have to do tons of them. And so we have an entire building full of students trying to print from the same 4 printers, two of which caught on fire.
You used printers? I didn't think paper was used in school anymore. I thought everything was digital, one-to-one.
For these projects, we have to print them and put them in a very fancy, very expensive portfolio, so I'm extra broke. Because tuition doesn't cover these fancy pants portfolios we had to have.
Why would it, right? Why would
it?
Were you the kid in elementary school that turned in every single, 2-page paper on George Washington and one of those slick kind of portfolios to your teacher?
With the slide thing on the end of it?
No, I wasn't one of those kids. I was one of those kids that I was lucky if I could find both pages out of my backpack, but because they would just be shoved in there, and I had to turn into one of those students that now puts all of my stuff all in fancy portfolio sleeves, and we were going over them. Everybody was wearing gloves to look at the portfolios and stuff, and I was in there and I was like, I might have Cheeto dust on mine. I'll reprint it.
Cheetos are good.
Because I'm like, for the most part, if I'm submitting my portfolio to places, it is going to have to be online because I want out of Ohio. So
yeah.
But no, we were all fighting over these printers, and it became literally fighting over these printers. The 4 printers went down to 2, and since I also work these labs, I'm constantly fixing these printers.
Right.
And I'm the one that finally turned one of them off after it started smelling like fire, and I could not find any jam. I'm the one that turned it off and was like, no. I have stuff to do too.
We are not dying today.
Yeah, I'm like, we're turning this one off. And so we went down to 2 printers, and it's a bunch of, the design students are basically they're the same as the fine arts students, only not as dirty. So So
we'll
it's basically
we'll have to ask our guests later on if he agrees with all this.
Yeah, because whenever I was finishing up grad school, that was when we didn't turn something in digital, all my professors were like, don't give me the fancy portfolio thing, I'm just going to throw it away. So,
we have to do that. The fine arts kids didn't. They just they got to turn in their stuff however they want, and see, that's the nice difference. The only reason I didn't go fine arts was because I like money.
Yeah. Money's good.
But when it comes to grading, it's really hard to fail these fine arts classes.
Yeah.
Because that is your art, and in design, it is not like that. That you can do it wrong. No matter how creative you think you are, they will tell you it's crap and to go make it look like everybody else's. So,
nice.
You can see how happy I am to almost be done. I'm like, I am so done.
You must be. You're giddy. You're super giddy.
Yes,
bud.
I know. I'm like, the closer I am to done, the closer I am to working on my own stuff, my own comics.
Yes.
That's what I want to do. That's what all this is for.
Right. Well, we're super excited about that, and we're glad you're seeing the end of the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And on that note, we're also joined tonight by my buddy, the man who's like the master of news now in our podcast, Mr. Brad Bale. How are you, Brad?
I would like to say I'm doing all right, as usual, but I think I'm just now coming down from the depression that I had after the Batman versus Superman trailer that
yes.
kind of catapulted me into a dark and joyless world. So I'm hoping that this podcast can cheer me up tonight. It's already helping.
After that, you're like, what is life? What is life? Why am I here?
I really am like Matthew McConaughey. What is life, man?
Right?
What is it?
All right. I'll tell you what. I'm going to go in that movie Interstellar. I'm going to just watch Batman and Superman and be sad. Brad, we're going to have to get into that later, but how's things been for you besides the depression from Batman and Superman?
Doing well. Got a lot of stuff up on the side. I'm continuing my coverage of Convergence, which can also be depressing at points. But
I can imagine.
Other than that, and justifying spending $4 on a book that I have to go back to my years and years of collection of DC comic books to be like, I remember that character from 1997 who was on Earth like 60 million, and that 28th version of Superman that was from wherever, I don't know, but Convergence is weighing on me a little bit, but overall I'm being a little facetious because I have gotten some enjoyment out of the book. But I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to talk about a great new comic that we got coming out here, and I really want to hear how a distinguished professor like Dr. Wright makes the jump to comic books.
Heck yeah, and nice segue, Brad. And I was telling Greg earlier that he might be the smartest person we've had on this podcast.
Gee, thanks.
I mean, we don't
I don't want to make anyone feel bad. I'm not here to hurt anyone.
Compared to Casey, everybody's a professor. So, man, I hope you heard that.
Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, our guest tonight is writer and creator of the book Wild Bullets, Dr. Greg Wright. Greg, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well. I was about to say good, but I thought after highlighting the PhD, I better get grammatical about it, right?
Gotcha. You have to make sure that that all fits together under the doctor umbrella, right?
Yeah, in the hallways I just try to be nice, and people are like, "How are you doing?" I say, "I'm doing pretty good. How are you?" And then somebody says, "I'm doing well," and I'm like, "Oh, you got me. You got me.
Just burned me. Thanks."
Yeah, I'm just walking down the hallway, and now I look like a putz. Thanks.
Yeah. So Greg, you said you're an assistant professor. You said?
That's correct. Yep.
And what are you a professor of, sir?
I'm a professor of English and Communications at Davenport University in Michigan.
Hell
Excellent.
yeah.
And I got my PhD from Michigan State. So the S could be Michigan State. I'm wearing a Superman shirt, so.
That's pretty rad.
They had a good run until they ran into those Blue Devils in the Final Four, right?
Oh yeah. They got so much further than they meant to get or were destined to get.
Sure.
So I feel proud of it.
That's good, man.
For whatever. I mean, not like I played basketball for them or anything. But.
It's just I'm from Charlotte, so it's either Duke or Carolina here. Even if the closest you've ever gotten to there is seeing one of their shirts in a Walmart, you kind of have to pick, between the two. So sorry to bring that up.
No, that's okay with me.
It's all good, man. So and for those who are listening and not watching, Greg is coming to us from the library at the university, right, Greg?
Right. No, this is actually.
We're like, is there a line of people waiting behind you to use the internet right now?
Yeah, actually.
Like, hurry up, what's the guy doing?
They're like, oh, come on, we got finals. Hurry up, get out of here, man.
They
Well,
gotta
Greg,
print those portfolios, dude.
that's right. They got to use those 4 printers up, okay? Well, Greg, we're
Yeah,
excited to
exactly.
have
I'm
you.
gonna tie those up.
Yeah. We're excited to have you on tonight, sir, and talking about your book. But first, before we go into that, let's talk about your geeky origin story. Tell us where it all began for you.
Where all of which thing began? The
just
obsession
like
with.
yeah, with geek culture, like
I was gonna say
what-
no. Skip to the geeky part.
Yes. Come on. What was geeky stuff for Greg at a young age?
Oh, very, very early on, and this is even going to tie in with the project that I'm going to talk about. I would obsessively watch movies, and I would watch Ghostbusters all the time, and Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, Star Wars. I would just watch these again and again and again, and like Brad was saying, also the movie Clue. And I think that these influences are things that I wear on my sleeves in terms of my writing and things like that. So
Right.
I don't know if I could pinpoint a single part where I started to get nerdy. It's just kind of like, when did you start to exist? And I don't remember anymore.
Yeah, so many of our creators, even talking about people like J.J. Abrams that were, so impacted by people like Lucas and Spielberg, it's just a lot of their work is very reminiscent of that, especially something like J.J. Abrams' Super 8, and it's just kind of cool to see it commented on and reflected with their work, and I know there's some of that going on in your book here.
Yeah, I wear my influences on my sleeve. I like to phrase it that way as opposed to just saying that I'm ripping off other people.
Hey, it's all how you say it, right?
Right, exactly.
So Greg, that was a good question that Brad was talking about earlier. How does one go from being a professor to writing comics? Tell us about what got you interested in, hey, I want to write a comic book.
Were you just dying to write something else?
I taught for several years at Kalamazoo College, and I got to teach screenwriting, among other things. And I really like that, but it's really hard to get a screenplay produced.
Yeah.
So basically taking a lot of what I learned about structure, storytelling, character development, I've taken that and I put it into script writing for comics. And there's a lot of parallels, and I feel like, it was a sharper learning curve for me to get into it. And I got involved with the Michigan Comics Collective last year. They just celebrated their 1-year anniversary, and so they really kind of helped get Wild Bullets off the ground. And I have a couple other projects that I could talk about as well, but I'll stick with Wild Bullets for now.
Yeah, no, cool. So let's talk about the book, because unfortunately we haven't got a chance to read too much of your book. So we're just as curious as the rest of our listeners and viewers about it. So tell us, what is Wild Bullets?
All right, excellent. Wild Bullets is a 35-page one-shot comic book. It's going to be coming out next month, May 15th. The big premiere is going to be at the Motor City Comic Con. And you can get digital copies, you can get paper copies online at the Michigan Comics Collective's website. But the story is about 4 adult siblings who are really dysfunctional. They don't get along together, and they're all pulp adventurers.
Okay.
So one's a detective, one's an archaeologist, one's a mad scientist, and one's a monster hunter. And they don't normally get along together, but then they go over to their parents' house for Thanksgiving, and as happens, they have a murder, right? So we've got to figure out how to solve this murder, how to work together, and how to face all the various threats that come into play. And their last name is Bullet, but they also all have guns and they like to shoot things. So, spoiler alert, they solve a lot of their problems through gunplay.
Excellent. So it sounds like a really cool whodunit with a very colorful cast of characters.
Yeah, and each of the characters takes a turn telling the story, and when they do, a different artist takes over and tells it in that style, so basically in sci-fi, adventure, crime, and horror. And so if I could just do a quick rundown of the artists, we've got Sean Seal, who is coming from a painting background, so he takes the noir and the gritty black and white crime section of things. Then we have the adventure section, which is featuring the archaeologist and the youngest of the Bullitt siblings, Kelly Bullitt, and she's kind of like a female Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And that's taken over by Jason Jimenez, who's been with the Comics Collective and done some other anthology work.
Mm-hmm.
Then the third section to come up is by Steve Sharp, who's got a real classic comic book look, and that's the sci-fi section, and it's really sort of like Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, old-timey, classic sci-fi type stuff. And then Joe Frere comes along with the kind of manga anime style to wrap things up with the horror section with Minerva Bullitt, who is like a paranormal occult investigator, and ties it all up with, you know, giant monsters who attack and kill, and zombies and that kind of thing.
Sure. So one of the things that fascinates me about the idea of your book is how, you know, each character tells a story kind of in a different way. And I always like, you know, especially, I guess I could use the example of the book Harley Quinn. There's a lot of like dream sequences or like flashback sequences that they use, and there's always a different artist. And I always really enjoy that, just seeing a different take, you know, seeing things in somebody's eyes differently, but in the same story. What made you decide to go that route? What made you decide to tell that one story in a different styles with different artists?
And if I could interject right before we answer that question, what made you go with something like, you said you have a manga style for one of the artists as opposed to using just something like watercolors? Because as much as I love watercolors and things for flashbacks, it is it's done a lot here lately. So I think it was kind of maybe a good idea to kind of steer away from that instead of go with that trend. So yeah, talk about that.
Well, Joe's style, he brings a lot of humor to it as well. He and I are working on a couple of other projects, one for a horror anthology called Cubicle of the Demon God, and it's kind of like Shaun of the Dead, but for office drones. So he brings in a lot of these darker visions with the horror, but makes it really light and fun and silly. And the book, on the whole, I think is, you know, it has a lot of humor in it. But like if you look at, you know, Sean's section or Jason's section, I mean, they play it serious, right? The art still looks good, and I think like you're saying, Brad, it skews away from a lot of the current trends of this must look that way or things like that. In some cases, the humor, like I said, is played very straight, even when there's a visual gag, and I think that's part of the fun of it, that you can skip along the surface of these stories and enjoy sort of all of them while it's this fast-paced adventure.
Yeah, and what's cool about this is you say it's a murder at Thanksgiving. Some people will see this as a horror. Some people may see this as a fantasy if they've had some tough Thanksgivings with their families. It probably crossed some people's minds, especially if you have anybody that roots for the Dallas Cowboys in your household.
Hey.
Wow.
Let's talk about the freelance private eye here, Steve Bullitt.
Hold on, let's talk about the fact that, God damn it, Brad, every podcast you manage to squeeze sports in.
Yeah, you could. I think our listeners could turn it into a drinking game at this point. Every time
how many times
that I can bring up sports. So I got. Yeah, so we got the Cowboys, we got the Yankees, and we have Duke basketball and Michigan State basketball. So stay tuned, listeners. Stay tuned. And stay
I'm going to throw one more in there, because also the Detroit Lions always play on Thanksgiving as well, and they usually don't make people quite as happy as the Cowboys tend to.
Yeah, that's right.
But I highly advocate to all the listeners that whenever you go to Thanksgiving dinner, it's good to be well armed. You know, if you can end it with a hail of bullets, that's good.
Well, the Lions fan, if you're a Lions fan, that may lead to not homicide at at Thanksgiving. It may be more suicidal thoughts you have.
So Greg, here's the real question: Why did we center it around Thanksgiving? Do you have like a bad Thanksgiving story that kind of inspired this?
Well, this whole story really was inspired by my grandmother's cooking. So, no,
Not bad.
not at all. I love you, Grandma Flory.
Explain
No,
that to us.
Well, my Grandma Flory is a sweet lady from the South. She talks kind of like Brad does, but
Okay.
feminine, more feminine.
Yes, sure.
Well, that should mean her cooking is amazing.
No,
Yeah.
right? Yes, it is. It is. I was just joking. I'm just joking. But
What part
I
of the
figured-
South, Greg, is she from?
she's from Georgia.
Georgia. Okay. Does she make good cheese biscuits? Because my grandma's specialty is cheese biscuits.
She makes a lot of pie. We always have pie.
Hi.
I love pie.
Go ahead, Greg.
Okay. Yeah. So what I think part of it is that in some ways this meeting of these dysfunctional siblings is kind of like a pulp version of the Royal Tenenbaums. And I was trying to think of why would they all be getting together in the same house when they go, all across the globe in all these different places and all these different adventures. Why would they get together if they hate spending time together? And I think, well, when do families who hate each other spend time together? Well, how about Thanksgiving? So,
When they're eating.
Yep.
When they're eating.
When you kind of have to, it's like a requirement.
and of all the holidays that seem to involve murder, Thanksgiving makes the most sense, I feel like.
True.
So,
True.
so the question I had is this Private Eye, Steve Bullitt, right? Is he inspired at all by Harvey Bullock from Batman? Because he kind of has that look. Now I'm looking at a still frame of it, but it says freelance private eye with flexible morals, so I immediately think Harvey Bullock.
Yeah, there's definitely some Bullock DNA in him.
Yeah.
Also, he's a bit like the Thing from Fantastic Four, just this big, hulking mass of a guy. In terms of his morals, I see him almost as being kind of like Conan the Barbarian, actually, like somebody who's got willing to play any side and profit off of it, and basically be a hired gun.
His morals go to the highest bidder, huh?
Right, exactly. Who's paying, right?
Right. Were any of these characters in your book inspired by people in your real life?
I like all the people in my real life too much to admit that. I'm sure there's little strands here and there.
Right.
There's probably some of the sibling dynamic between me and my sister, playing out somewhere in there. Although I will say that it's never led to gunplay between the two of us.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's comforting.
So far.
Yes.
Jury's still out, right?
Out of all the characters that I've looked through here for your book, I think the one that I'm most excited to read when it comes out is Kelly Bullitt. She looks like, she says she's an explorer, archaeologist, but she reminds me, her design, look, and feel. I don't know if you'll be familiar with this or not, Greg, or if Will or Piper will. But Roxy Rocket from the Batman, the animated series. If you don't know her, look her up. But I just kind of get that vibe and feel. Again, it's kind of tough without reading it. This book doesn't date until May 15th, right?
May 15th.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
I'm excited. Now, would you say then, since there are the darker bits besides the whodunit, what would you say that the age range for this would be then?
I would say it is whoever can afford this book should buy 10 copies. So,
Give them to everybody.
It's going to print, right?
If you're selling lemonade at a lemonade stand, jack up the prices so you can afford a copy. But no, I'm glad that you asked that. There's no nudity. There's no swearing in the book. And obviously they have guns, and so they're shooting people, but I don't think that there's any, it's not like Garth Ennis. There's not any emphasis on the gore or anything like that. It's much
So
more
not too terribly violent, aside from there is gun stuff, but not excessive.
Yeah, there's not any disembowelings or decapitations. I'm sorry.
Aw, man.
You're about the beheadings.
So not very accurate depiction of an average Thanksgiving if there's no disembowel.
Fair enough, right? I guess there is technically a decapitated turkey on the table.
Greg, is this gonna be available digital and in print, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, so you'll have both versions. All right, I have a question for you. So being Dr. Wright, was it hard to find the balance because it's something I always kind of think about as we work at Geeks with Wives and we put in a lot of time and we all have different things. Piper's going to school for graphic design. Will be the next host of the Tonight Show one night. Here about 2025 probably he'll be taking over, and you know I'm a teacher myself, albeit high school history, so we balance our love here you know, for these properties and our passion for that with our day-to-day lives and those jobs. How hard was it you to find the balance between creating these characters from the ground up and developing this book and communicating with the artist and also doing your day job, right, as a professor? Was that a tough challenge?
Well, I think one of the things that I really like about being a professor is I get a certain degree of flexibility. You know, I've got a set schedule of when I'm teaching classes, and I've got office hours. But one of the things that's a real pleasure to me is, like, I teach some online classes, and that lets my schedule open up considerably in terms of how much time I'm spending on things. And the other thing, too, is that working with all of these artists that I've mentioned, and you know what, I realized I didn't mention our colorist, Sarah Souls of Illustration Studios, who is doing a phenomenal job on the book. And, you know, we keep throwing more pressure on her about this, that, and the other thing, and she's very patient and diplomatic and professional with us. And it's really a dream come true to work with with all these people, because there's not like a lot of prodding. You know, it's not like I need to pull teeth and get them to do things. They get excited about it, and they love to take these characters and make their own section of the story, really fiercely their own creatively and things like that. So it's been a pleasure working with all of them, and it is not the time management challenge that I might have thought it would be beforehand. It's been just a pleasure beginning to end. I love doing this kind of thing.
It's pretty awesome.
So you're encouraging me to become a professor so I can have time to read more comics. I got you. Okay. That will make my doctorate worth it if I ever can accomplish it.
I don't want anybody at work to hear about this and say, "Yeah, you know, this guy's not busy enough."
I
You could be doing more stuff.
One of my favorite, like, doctoral things that I have as far as geekdom, there was a guy who he was going to school for his PhD when I was going for my master's, and we had like he was taking one of my classes as an elective for his program, and his last name was Doom, so he was like one semester away from being Dr. Doom. So he's
Awesome.
that would be his greatest accomplishment, more so than the degree itself that everybody has to call him Dr. Doom from now on.
That last name would motivate me to do that much school. It would.
You're all, I must be Dr. Doom.
Right? I wouldn't even care what I was a doctor in, like.
Just a Dr.
It
Greg,
doesn't really matter.
Go ahead.
You could have it be in anything. And in some ways, I suppose I was motivated to get my PhD so I could be Dr. Wright and avoid all the Mr. Wright jokes that I get.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
still.
Is that do you get a lot of that, Greg?
I do. I get Mr. Wrong and I get Mr. Left and all this stuff, and it's like people are like, I bet you've never heard this before, and it's like, you just turned into a grandpa talking to me.
Yes,
you know,
I've heard it all. Heard it all.
Yeah, you should be like, I don't know, I've been alive for, a while now, so.
Probably heard
Right.
it.
Probably heard it.
See, Greg, I figured what got you to really get into comics and writing your comics is after you finished your dissertation, you probably wanted a book with pictures in it. That's what
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that what
I have
happens?
treated my creative work for years now as very much a release and very separate from a lot of the other professional obligations because you do have so much more freedom to just go wild with it and have fun, and it doesn't need to be so stuffy, and it doesn't need to be peer reviewed, and you don't need to deliver it at a conference. And I think I actually just put everybody's brain to sleep, so I'll stop with.
I know, it's okay. I'm interested in this stuff. So you have one person who is listening who is, which is a host of the show. So you only have to worry about esteemed people like me at Geeks with Wives reviewing your material. And it won't be as bad as a peer review, I promise. So,
Right. Yeah.
I can't
I
wait.
always love that. Oh, go ahead.
No, so I hope I get the opportunity to review it. I'm looking forward to actually getting to read the book.
Oh,
Yeah.
I wanted to.
I'll get copies. I swear, I will.
Sweet.
I'm so excited, see, because that's another thing I'm looking forward to in finally graduating and finally being done. Is I'm like, I have a list of articles I want to write for Geeks with Wives, but haven't had the time to do. It's like to look into it or do it, and they're not time sensitive. And also, I haven't been reviewing things because I don't have the time to do, things on a deadline outside of the things I'm doing on a deadline. I'm so excited to start doing that.
Piper, just get your PhD and you'll have time.
I'll have plenty of time and some monies.
So great.
Like I need to disabuse everybody that I'm not quite the player that you might have thought that I was in terms of
No.
I don't have a bag with a $sign on it.
And all this time.
So Greg,
I thought that once you got a PhD, you were pretty much handed a giant $sign bag.
Yeah, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, you're handing it to the bank for repaying your loans.
Right. I did get from family. I did get a shirt that said "Trust me, I'm a doctor" on it, which was actually kind of creepy coming from my family, but.
Right. That's great, Greg. What other genres would you like to delve into besides the murder mystery whodunit type of comic book?
Well, I'd love to have a follow-up to Wild Bullets to tell the story of the parents. The dad is a retired military hero, so he could tell pulpy war stories, and the mom is a masked cowgirl for some reason, and she could tell
like a mask, like Zorro kind of mask,
romance and stuff. Yeah, like actually wearing the domino mask at all times, including the family dinner, and they all know who she is.
Yeah, she's like,
oh, I love this. So it's kind of got a bit of a campy feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of like the Venture Brothers, sort of a tone like that at times.
Yes.
Ooh, I'm sold.
Love them ventures. Gotta love them ventures.
Yeah, I'm definitely sold. I like the idea of the campy feel. I really like the idea of a different artist doing each person's version of the story, because not only is that going to help the reader separate what's happening, but that does give a lot of artists a chance to strut their stuff. I love that idea.
Yeah, we had a lot of success with the Michigan Comics Collective's first anthology. So I tried to treat this as this could be a mini anthology and give me a chance to work with a lot of the different artists whose work that I loved, or wanted to try doing something a little bit different here or there. And it's funny too, because like some people, like Steve Shar, who was doing the science fiction section, said, "Oh, I really want to do the horror," and I'm like, "No, you've got to do science fiction because your style really works for that." And in the end, he was like, "Oh, I really having a lot of fun doing this." And so that's really cool to kind of pull out and tease out these different talents from people and get them to see how they can do their own work in a different way. It's really exciting to see it take shape.
Yeah. What, Greg? You mentioned you're working on some other projects. What else do you have in the books right now?
Well, I can show you pictures of this, right, for the audio bookcast, for the audio podcast here, right? Yeah. But I have some copies of Monstrous, which is a project that I'm working on with an artist by the name of Ken Lamug, and he is out of Las Vegas. And all of these issues, we have the first 3 issues done, and they're all one-shots, self-contained stories. And the basic idea behind Monstrous is that it takes place in Frankenstein's Bavaria, and Europe has sort of become like the Wild West, except instead of cowboys and Indians, it's robots versus monsters. And they all tell their own little sorts of stories, and it's a lot of fun. And basically, all the plots are retrofitted from John Wayne movies.
Ah, yes.
Nice. I'm
Very
excited.
Gotta love some John Wayne. That's all my grandpa used to watch when I was a kid.
Mhm.
Right, like everybody's grandpa did, right?
It was like John Wayne on our local Fox station, and then in between there on Saturdays sometimes you get Star Wars, and that was like enough for me. I would like sit through the John Wayne because I'm like, I know there's a chance Star Wars is gonna come on.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I think that was my
Yeah.
childhood, was Westerns, Star Trek, and then Star Wars.
It's everybody's.
And it's funny how much they all kind of actually blend together in some ways, right?
Yeah.
It's true. It's good. That's exactly true.
Han Solo is a cowboy, and
Yeah.
when they first pitched Star Trek, they called it Wagon Train to the Stars. So we're ripping on a long-forgotten TV show now called Wagon Train that nobody remembers. But
Hey, I remember that. Yes. Good. Greg, if you could write any comic book character for any genre, do you have anybody in mind that you would just like, if I could get a chance to write, like, I don't know, Superman or Batman, or is there anybody in mind that you have?
Well, somebody asked me that earlier this week, and I had a cliched answer, and so I'm going to go with a less middle-of-the-road kind of an answer, and I'm going to say I would love to write Hated Man, who is very much sort of like a Z-lister universe, but I'd love to. He came out in the Silver Age as a backup feature in Detective Comics, and I would love to keep that Silver Age vibe. Have him doing it in the swinging '60s with it was him and his wife, and they were detectives, and they would drive around the countryside. And he also had this weird ability to get stretchy, not quite as stretchy as Plastic Man, but he could still like punch people with, I don't know, his ear and weird things like that. I just feel like that would be a lot of fun to resurrect this character that nobody knows about and just have, get that out of the toy box and go wild with it.
Yeah, what was the name of the character again?
A lot dirtier than it was.
Very cool, man. So tell our listeners again where they can find your book.
It is available through the Michigan Comics Collective's website, which is michigancomicscollective.org. I also have just a small website that I put together for it called wildbullets.blogspot.com. And it'll be available in print as well as digitally. The digital will be available through Drive-Thru Comics.
Mm-hmm.
And, so can I talk about one more project that I've got going on?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Go ahead.
Definitely.
I'm working on another project with an artist by the name of Eric Reichenbach, who has been on Survivor twice. And I'm not just name-checking that. That has something to do with the project itself. It's called Last Monster Standing, and it's about like giant kaiju.
Ooh.
And what it is giant monsters invade Tokyo, and then they get their own reality show.
That's
Very
interesting because I think back to Pacific Rim and how the kaiju were embraced by that culture and almost became like celebrities after the film opening up with that montage. So I think that's a very interesting. I don't know if they were inspired by that, but kind of a twist on that idea to have them on a reality show. I like kaiju. Did you like Pacific Rim, Greg?
But I'm one of those people who's also like, I really like the old school stuff as well. The main character in Last Monster Standing is a giant monster based on Gamera, because he's kind of a nerd, he's kind of a loser, like Gamera.
Right.
The rocket turtle. Yeah, so there's like one who's like Godzilla, one who's like Mecha Godzilla, and one who's like the Smog Monster, that kind of thing. But they've all got regular people names like Bryce and Travis and Lizzie and stuff like that.
Imagine this giant, like 80-foot winged, like moth creature. He's like, "Hey, this is Steve. This my buddy Brad over there."
Yes. Steve
Exactly,
and Bob
yeah.
are my go-to generic names. I love it.
Yes.
When that book comes out, we definitely need to have you back on to discuss it once we read it.
Yes.
'Cause, like, I'm pretty interested by Kaiju and even outside of
Oh, yeah.
Godzilla.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, definitely. Me too. I'm excited.
When might we see that project, Greg?
We're probably going to go with a Kickstarter late summer, early fall.
Okay.
The first issue is very close to being done, and it's a lot of fun. It's goofy, it's silly, it's cartoony, but
Yeah.
you know, there's still some brains upstairs. Hopefully, right?
Well, we'll definitely have to get you back on once that's closer to being finished, because that sounds really fun.
Awesome. I would love to.
Yeah, for sure. Greg, where can our listeners find you on the Twitters?
Oh, my Twitter handle is Greg Henchman. So that's as though it were my last name, like Greg Henchman or something like that, right? So yeah, and it's just my regular name, Greg Wright. So there's a lot of Greg Wrights out there, but there's only one Greg Henchman. So.
Excellent. Well, very cool, man. Well, we look forward to reading Wild Bullets, and we can't wait to see the other stuff you're working on too, because it sounds like you got some really cool things coming up.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure, man. Do you want to talk with us about geek stuff now and news?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we're as always, we are about to go into our weekly time for our Week in Geek. Brad, why don't you go first? Why don't you start us off today, man? What do you got for us in your Week in Geek today?
All right. Well, this week I read 2 Convergence titles. I got to read Convergence #3 and the Flash Convergence tie-in. Let's start with the main book. It really does a good job of it hits you over the head a little bit with the idea that no matter the multiverse, that the Joker is the most despicable human being, no matter what version,
As
what
it should
universe, as it should be. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna spoil this book, but a really cool moment with some art inspired by Jim Lee's Joker from Hush, even though Jim Lee didn't do the art. And some cool moments between this Joker and Thomas Wayne. Now, Convergence is mainly focusing on, at least the main book, the story is told through the lens of the Earth 2 heroes. And some of that stuff with their team and their dynamic in that book is just, it doesn't feel as natural and as organic, which I guess is the exact same thing, right, Dr. Wright? It doesn't feel as organic as it should be. I don't know, a lot of the dialogue's a bit wonky and seems a bit forced, and I hope that the book's going to get better. I was listening to some interviews today with writers of Convergence across the board, and apparently at issue 4 or 5 there's supposed to be a major twist that really ramps up the action. So as opposed to Marvel big events tend to hook you the first issue, and then if they're going to fall flat, they take a sharp drop like Fear Itself. Convergence, DC tie-ins, Flashpoint, Crisis on Infinite Earths, they get better as they go on. That tends to be the trend. So I think this has been decent so far. It hasn't been riveting. I want to see how it's going to impact the overall main continuity. I think that's the questions that all DC fans want answered, because all of these other main titles are ongoing, while the events of Convergence are focusing on past multiverses, or they're focusing on Earth 2 heroes or whatnot. So how is this going to impact the main continuity, if at all, is the big question. I also read the Flash tie-in. Barry Allen's trapped in Gotham City. Iris is been trapped in the future. He is trapped in a past Gotham, and there's a really cool character moment with him and Bruce Wayne discussing how Barry Allen has to tackle this problem, saying everything, very cliche type of writing, but everything, no pun intended for the Flash, this is a marathon and not a sprint. But this has probably been my favorite kind of tie-in of Convergence. I've read Green Arrow, Atom, and the Flash tie-ins. Really, as far as Week in Geek, that's been about it for me.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man.
Kudos for taking on Convergence because the events that always like that pull from so many different versions and so many different comics and so many different universes, they usually like I can't get into them because I don't feel like researching things that I didn't feel like reading when they were out. Like I wasn't into them when they're out, and if you reference them too much, then I'm lost. And
Yeah.
so I don't like reading comics that I have to research in order to understand what's going on.
And
So
the
I like
thing,
that somebody is just so I still do know what's going on.
the thing about these Convergence books is DC took a lot of criticism after Final Crisis of their events not being kind of accessible for the general public, where Marvels always are very accessible. And they, at the end of every book, which maybe it should come at the beginning, there is a background on each character of why they're at this point and their history throughout the Golden or Silver Age, depending on how far back the character goes and how what you're seeing in Convergence, even if it is an alternate timeline, plays into the character's overarching story. So have done a good job of trying to make it more accessible. Now, one of the things they would benefit from is, I don't know, you guys read a lot of Marvel, and they tend to have those first 2 pages that say, this is this character, this is that character. And it's always like Iron Man and Thor and Spiderman. It's like, okay, we know who these guys are. But with these Earth 2 characters and some of these kind of more out there multiverse characters, I think that would help DC a little bit with their big event storytelling. I know they maybe don't want to dumb it down to that point, but if you're trying to sell books to as many people as possible, I just never understood why they don't take that approach. Do you
That's
guys like
DC.
that?
I like DC, but when they do these kind of big events, I usually skip out on DC's big events like these because I don't like feeling lost or like I'm gonna have to sit here with next to a computer with Google or something to get through a comic. And Marvel does make it easier when they do it.
Yeah, are y'all fans of those pages, those character pages that say, here's our story, this is our teams, this is who's involved, or do you think it's just maybe not necessary?
I think for seasoned, they can get really annoying and boring, and they're in the way, and it's like, I get it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I try to keep in mind that new people want to get into the comics, every day. They want to see what's up. And they would be lost without them, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes it easier for new readers to get into something currently by giving them a little bit of a backtrack.
Yeah, I agree with you, Piper, that you have to kind of, at least from my perspective as a writer, you have to sort of treat every issue as this is somebody's first issue.
That was Stan Lee's golden rule, as this is somebody's first issue the whole time he wrote comics.
Yeah, I do think that is a really good practice. Even if we think about it just from a business standpoint, that's the best practice because you're going to get new readers to keep reading if they don't feel like they're just being milked for money by having to go and like seek out and buy tons of back issues in order to jump in right now.
Yeah.
And personally, I'd rather have a roster with everybody's faces and names and little backgrounds as opposed to, in the middle of the story, they're like, well, hello there, sister. And how has your business been going? And, they really artificial, hackney kind of stuff. Trying to recap.
Another one I hate is trying to read a comic and all of a sudden there's like a tiny little note at the bottom that says, if you want to know what the hell's going on now, visit issue this of this and issue this of this and issue this of this to find out what they're talking about. And I'm like, you're kidding me.
Yeah, I went away from that recently, but I read one other thing real quick. I read The Flash Rebirth by Jeff Johns and Ethan Van Sciver. I went back and read that. A lot of the stuff from the Flash TV show with the Reverse Flash or Professor Zoom is kind of inspired from this relaunch of the Flash. Of course, it's different because this is when they brought Barry Allen back after he had been dead he was dead for like 30 years after Crisis on Infinite Earths, when he sacrificed his life to save everyone. And I just really didn't realize until I started watching the Flash TV show and researching and going back and reading a lot of Barry Allen stuff. He's become one of my favorite human beings in all the comics, because he is, I mean, I know this is putting it straightforward, but he's just a good guy. Like, and not in a G. Willikers always cheesy type of way. Like, his actions so much speak for themselves when the dialogue doesn't have to. And I think that's powerful storytelling. When you don't need to say it, you just can see it. I don't need monologues explaining what somebody is. I just want to see it. And so many times throughout DC's history, looking back on some of this older stuff, Barry Allen's just an inspiring character.
Yeah.
Because for me, Wally, I know this, Agasicles was talking about this. For my generation, I'm 28 years old, and most of my life, Barry Allen was dead in the comics. Wally West was our Flash, and I like Wally. All right, he's a wisecracking smartass, but we loved him from the Justice League TV show.
He's like Deadpool Flash.
Yeah, but I mean, there is, in my opinion, and I don't mean to ruffle any feathers, but there's just a lot more to Barry Allen than there is Wally West.
Yeah.
No, I agree a lot, and Wally West was my experience with who the Flash was for a long time, but nowadays especially, we have plenty of wisecracking, smartass young heroes, and after a while they kind of start feeling flat. They start feeling like the same person because they all kind of have the same, I guess, shtick.
Yeah.
And so backtracking to Barry Allen was amazing. He changed Flash in my eyes from okay to more of a solid character.
We're going to talk about Batman versus Superman trailer here in a minute, but it seems like you have to be a wisecracking smartass or a dark, gritty, brooding character. There's no room.
Especially in order to get your own freaking show or movie.
Yeah. So that's why I love that CW Flash show so much. They don't try to make Barry Allen into something he's not. They just
he feels very organic in that show.
They flesh
I haven't even gotten to watch that show just from catching the ass end of every episode so far. I've already managed to get that it's good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry that wasn't over in a flash. Let's go to the next person.
Piper, what do you got for us?
It's okay that he went over as much as he did because, thanks to all the finals and stuff like that, I haven't gotten to pause. Literally, me pausing is sleeping. So
yeah, right.
my only taking a break, I don't want to read anything at all.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I've got shows under my belt, but I only have really one comic that I can remember right now under my belt, and I didn't even like it. So, since you guys talk usually like the big Marvel and DC, this is why I usually I go off and try to find like random indie comics that just kind of pop out.
Right.
Or even indie as being maybe Dark Horse, IDW, stuff like that. But still not the big two.
Right.
The only one I grabbed this time, I thought the cover was really pretty. It probably helped that my favorite colors were involved, but it was Drones. It was an IDW, and I think it was called Drones, just Drones. I'm not sure. And it looked like it was set in Iraq, in the Iraqi War, and all that stuff going on. So I thought I was following, but I loved the art style. But the story had me kind of going, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I don't. What the hell is going on? And I can't really tell you what's going on. Now, granted, I only read one, so it might be one of those that I need to read more in order to really grasp what they're getting at and what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But
So it was written by Grant Morrison or Jonathan Hickman. Those guys, I'm pretty knowledgeable about a lot of the source material, and I gotta look a lot of stuff up when I'm reading their work. But go ahead, Piper.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for this one, I really wish I had I had been able to look more up, especially when I jump on random indie comics. I'm usually trying to write down, okay, who does it say the author is, so that I can have more reference material available later. This one I read in a hurry because it was like, well, I want to read some comics and I have like this little slot of time. I'm gonna do it. And there was chaos going on all around me, so I didn't I didn't get what I read, and I feel bad because I feel like I was reading it for the sake of I'm reading a comic, damn it. So
Yeah.
but no, it didn't grab me. It wasn't one of those I don't get what's going on, but I'm incredibly curious.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those I'm not following what's going on, and the artwork's great, but this seems very not my thing. So, so I'm not going to give a definite drones was good or drones wasn't good. I'm going to give
Yeah.
a drones doesn't seem to be my thing, but the art is great. I like the particular art style, and I found it fitting, at least for what I was reading.
Yeah.
So other than that, like I got to dork out on like Agents of Shield. I got to watch things. Agents of
Cool.
Shield's the only comic thing that I've gotten to watch, and the butt end of Flash and the butt end of Arrow because I'm a season behind on Arrow, and everything behind on Flash. I'm pretty sure that's just a season, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's still in the first season.
okay, so I'm a
Been
season
buttoned
behind.
a lot.
Yeah, I'm a season behind on both of those, and I watched all of Daredevil. So, because
Oh, so
Daredevil
good.
couldn't have come out at a more inopportune time for people, for students. Sheesh.
Yeah.
Like, hey, it's almost finals time. Let's drop an entire season of Daredevil now.
Boom.
For people who are
Right, yeah.
used to binge watching, no, I couldn't not do that.
Yeah.
That was I'm going home and I'm not reading crap. I just want to stare at a screen and, I don't know, drool and whatever.
Yeah.
So those two I'm caught up in. So I can talk about those, but I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, so.
You suck so bad.
We talked a lot about it on last week's Geeks.
Yeah, I know. I didn't get
stream.
to.
So, and they're gonna hopefully we're gonna do a spoiler cast on that soon with Everett.
All right, so this is what I will say. This is what I will say then, so as not spoil anything. Don't judge Daredevil by episode 1.
Yeah.
The acting was terrible. Episode 2 is
I've
amazeballs.
seen Daredevil. I just haven't seen Agents of Shield.
Okay, well, still for Daredevil, the whole rest of it is amazeballs, and I guess everybody on the planet is in agreement that the best fight scene in that entire thing was the second episode. The hallway fight scene at the end was just so organic and like way more believable than any fight scene in any superhero thing I have seen so far. Not that they suck.
Yeah.
Just this one was more human. You knew that this person is still human despite what he's doing.
Right.
And as for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I won't spoil that. Just, it's awesome. It's getting more awesome every episode, and this one was like super awesome.
Yes.
Well, one of the reasons it changes a little bit after episode 1 is the showrunner was Drew Goddard, and he did Cabin in the Woods, and he works with Joss Whedon on a lot of stuff. And he left to go work on the new Spider-Man movie for Sony.
Oh my God, I didn't realize they're doing another one. Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
that's right.
which we can talk about in news later if we have time.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
I can say that the first episode of Daredevil had me worried because it was so stiff and nobody was like working right together, and the acting was terrible, and he's supposed to be blind, but he's not. He's he's looking at stuff he really shouldn't have been and stuff like that, but even that's got to be hard to pull off, I think. Is if you're not blind, a blind character's got to be kind of hard because you're going to want to look at certain things. But I would imagine that they would have places for you to focus your eyes on while you're doing stuff. But I mean, if somebody's talking to you, you're going to want to look at them.
Yeah.
But He got more believable in that sense, and everybody meshed so much better after that first episode. That first episode just was almost like a mini train wreck, and I got scared. But the second episode, it was already like, oh no, they got this. They definitely got this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to get to news, so I'm just gonna go through my
Yeah.
stuff real quick.
Oh.
I didn't read too much. Well, let me tell you what I did first. Obviously, you all know I got to go to Star Wars Celebration 7,
I was gonna say, you're gonna talk about that, right?
which was awesome. It was like, I gotta say, and I'm a little biased, sure, but coming from an outsider's point of view, this was my fiance's like first time going to a Star Wars Celebration, and her one really big comment was, "It is crazy how much more inviting and friendly the fans at a Star Wars convention seem more than any other convention she had been to." And she like constantly was making friends while waiting in line, and just randomly like running into people that she had just met and be like, "Oh hey, hi," you know. So I think that's a really cool testament to Star Wars fans and just the environment and the atmosphere at a Star Wars celebration, and how everybody truly is there. They're fans of one really big thing, and they all love it. And it's all really sentimental and passionate in different ways for them, and that really translate to, the experience of even somebody who's never gone to one of those before. So that was really great, and of course, there was a lot of cool stuff to see. I was telling Piper before the show that this was the first time in probably about 6 years that I've done Darth Vader at a convention, because it's crazy. Like, you walk 5 feet and there's like a mob of like 30, 40 people that want pictures with you. So it was like I spent like literally 3 hours trying to see like 4 or 5 different like set type pieces that they had set up at the exhibit hall, and the rest of the time was just me taking pictures with people. So it was really cool. I got to go to the panel for Star Wars Rebels and see the cast and director Dave Filoni and the executive producer, and then of course I got to go to the press conference afterwards, and I videoed that, so that'll be coming soon to the website, so keep an eye out for that. Other than that, I just, sticking with the theme of the week, I got caught up on Star Wars 3 and issue 4, which came out this week. I love the comic book. I love the direction it's going in. I think it's really cool that we really get to get kind of more of the background as far as what the characters are thinking, that we're already familiar with from the movies, but we necessarily didn't really get inside their heads. And
I would
we really
say movies can't capture the internal.
Yeah, and we really get a sense of that in these comic books, and especially, we see the reactions of the different characters when, like, for example, Darth Vader is being a badass and taking down a whole, like, Imperial Walker single-handedly. And obviously that's not things...
Panel.
Yeah, and obviously those are things we didn't get to see in the movie very much. So for you to be able to get that little extra added oomph, it just makes the movies all that better to me in my mind. So anyways, that was it for Star Wars and me. Brad, let's get some news real quick for the last couple minutes here. What do we got?
All right, let's go through this real quick. So we'll do like a lightning type of news here. That way, lightning round where we can get through all of this and get your input. So I'll run through the news and just give me a quick comment on it. And we'll start with Dr. Greg. All right.
I like this idea. This is good.
Hi, everybody. Right?
Hello, Dr. Greg.
All right, Dr. Greg, the first bit of news. All right, there is going to be an animated Spider-Man film coming out in 2018, separate of the live-action film. It is going to be produced by Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Those are the 21 Jump Street and Lego movie guys. So, Dr. Greg, are you excited for an animated Spider-Man movie?
Yeah. Well, I think in their hands they can do just about anything and make it fun and a good time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Marvel's hit everything out of the park, and I do think Spider-Man is one of the best to explore from an animated perspective initially. All right, moving on to more Spider-Man news. The next film will be the live-action film after Civil War, July 28, 2017. We're down to a list of 5 people. The 5 people who will play Spidey are all white guys. Imagine that. All right. Asa Butterfield of Ender's Game. Tom Holland of The Impossible, which was a very good movie about a tsunami.
Okay.
All right. Timothy Chalamet of Interstellar. Liam James of the Way Back, one of my favorite movies of 2013 with Sam
yeah,
Rockwell.
okay.
If you hadn't seen it, check it out. Coming of Age story. And Nat Wolff. So, what do you think, Will? They're all white guys. I guess it's Peter Parker. Yes, he's white, but I would have liked to have seen him maybe a little more diversity in this cast. What do you think?
True.
We're not letting everybody comment on all of the news.
Well, there's so much news. We're gonna go one comment at a time per news item.
I think I read somewhere Kevin Feige confirmed for sure that it would be Peter Parker. So, to me, that wasn't a surprise. I didn't think with Marvel taking over the Spider-Man franchise that they were going to use that as they weren't going to use a different Spider-Man like Miles Morales as their starting point. I was like, okay, they're gonna go with the Peter Parker route and start from there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, 'cause I think they're tying it into the Civil War and stuff, and that was Peter Parker.
Right.
Yeah.
And as far as the actors, the only two actors that I'm familiar with are Asa Butterfield from Ender's Game, and then the gentleman from the Way Back. I think either of those guys would be. Yeah, I think either of those guys would be a great candidate to play Peter Parker. I think they're both right in the age that Marvel's looking forward to cast their new Spider-Man at, and I definitely think both of them have the acting chops to, play with the big boys like RDJ and Chris Evans. So I think either one of those guys would be great. So.
Yeah,
that's my take on the Spider-Mans.
All right, Piper. This one's coming to you. Don't worry. All right.
Boy.
So Brian Michael Bendis near the end of his run of X-Men as Secret Wars is upon us. He's outed Bobby Drake, the Iceman, as he's come out, and we have a great article on GeeksWithWives.com by the one and only Tyler Pollock, who has a very interesting perspective on this. So check out Tyler's article. But Piper, what do you think about this? People are upset because it's happening at the very end of the run. They feel like it was kind of pigeonholed in here, not explored by Bendis, even though he promises it will have repercussions for the X-books after Secret Wars. What do you think, Piper?
All right, I do agree that shoving it in at the end feels like they almost didn't plan for it to happen at all, but all of a sudden we're like, well, shit, everybody's starting to talk about diversity. Let's squeeze this in here real quick so that we still look like we're up on it. Mm-hmm. If they continue to explore it, though, I hope they do it gracefully and respectfully and know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I have no problem with any of any comic book character coming out as being gay. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think, and anybody that does have a problem with that needs to reflect on their life maybe a little bit, but especially with Marvel, they just haven't really been the most graceful at going, look, we're more diverse. Yeah. Usually because they've been going, look, diversity, instead of just doing it, so that they're doing it for the sake, instead of letting it happen, and letting it feel organic, they tend to go, hey, check it out, you guys, look how progressive we are, right? Right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Hey, guys, come on. No.
They're dangling the carrot in front of us.
Yeah, they tend to, if they didn't parade it around or make such a big deal, because, I've had homosexual friends and they've come out and it hasn't been generally like this big hoopla of, woo, hey, guess what I realized?
Yeah, right.
But
I like the same sex.
At the same time, they're doing a lot more diversity in their books than DC is doing. But hopefully, after Convergence, DC is gonna try to more naturally work that into their books.
I'm sure DC is going to, they're gonna try to keep up. They're gonna need to keep up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my hope, though, is that I have a feeling that seeing the way Marvel does it, DC can learn from that and do it a lot more gracefully, I think.
All right.
I mean, never mind. Sorry. Yeah, I'm going too long on it, but
just I want us to get through all of it.
Yeah,
pushed on time, right? Will? But I'm gonna start back with you, Piper, on this topic because I thought about you as soon as I heard it. All right, DC's launched their Supergirl initiative, in which toys, clothing, comic books we're working with several different companies to make sure they're pushing female characters. What do you think of this idea, Miss Steve?
I like it. It seems a little bit on the edge of kind of Marvel going on the View to announce female characters. However, not quite as bad, because I think in the fact that when it's forced upon you as a girl, especially growing up, that you play with dolls and boys play with action figures, and that's just kind of the way it is. It means that, when shopping for girls, you're going directly into the dolls part, not the action figures. And I do think that a little bit of, no, hey, we're definitely promoting the girls now, will show that there have been girls. Like, there have been female characters. There have been tons. And maybe the reason why everybody likes to go around saying that there's not nearly enough female comic book characters and this and that is because they're not properly promoted. I mean, maybe they need it. Maybe... Right? Maybe they need to, be pushed more in the forefront. I feel like this is a, hey, let's do that Disney princess line, but with comic books. I still feel it comes across like that, but hell, I mean, condense them all, market them to chicks. Just, I don't think that makes them more progressive. I think that makes them more money savvy, honestly.
I wish it would have already have been done, and they would have been doing it across their lines anyway, pushing females toward toward males and females, and just considering female characters as equally as important. But at least they're working on their problems and changing their direction. So you got to respect them for that, at least.
Like, I like that. That's the part I appreciate. The part that I just will never quite appreciate is the massive, like, public patting yourself on the back going, look how progressive we are. Again, like, do it, but don't do it so that the fact that they have ovaries is the big deal. You know what I mean?
Do it with humility too.
Yeah, do it with humility, and do it with, I don't know, a little bit of grace. Do it with a little more grace. Not like you're trying to make a buck off of chicks, but more, this needed to happen.
All right, Dr. Greg. Tyler Perry is playing Baxter Stockman in the new TMNT film. Now, I'm a fan of Tyler Perry, not just the Medea films, but he was great as the hotshot lawyer, defense attorney in Gone Girl, if you've seen him in that. So I'm excited to see him take on this role. What do you think, Dr. Greg?
I think that he certainly has, like you're saying, in Gone Girl, really sort of proved his chops that he's not just somebody who can be pigeonholed. But at the same time, given his background as Medea, I kind of want to see, Baxter Stockman occasionally cross-dress, that kind of make it come full circle, right?
He has almost typecast himself, considering that is his most memorable character, his most memorable role.
Yeah.
He is more than that, though, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him take on that role. And the original Baxter Stockman was a black guy, so I'm glad they're not whitewashing the character like they did in the cartoons. So at least they got that going.
Well, they can't get away with that now. They could get away with that then. There's no way they could get away with that now.
Nope.
All right, last bit of news here before we do some trailer discussion. They're superheroes by now, people. Furious 8 has been greenlit for April 14th, 2017.
Yeah.
Will, what do you think?
I don't know, man. I think they're delving into the enough is enough waters. there's only so many times I can see Vin Diesel, doing some kind of crazy car stunt off of a bridge or onto a moving airplane, or dragging a bank vault through the streets of Puerto Rico. There's only so many times I can see that. So.
Furious 8 in space.
Yes. Yes. What are you gonna be like? Furious 20. You're all nursing home. Go-kart races.
I was super shocked. Like, I dropped off of I dropped off of the Furious shit like after 2 or 3. I think it was 3, and then all like. I don't know how I managed to not pay enough attention to find out that there was a 7.
Yeah.
And I was just like, really? They've done 7 feature-length car commercials and people are still paying to watch them? What?
Well, here's the
Yeah.
thing.
They're not even cool car commercials like the Transformers, where at least they like talked and shit.
Right.
It is the fastest movie, no pun intended, to $1 billion. It took it like 14 days to reach $1 billion worldwide. So we knew this was going to
People love
happen.
their cars, man. Damn.
Well, I think a big chunk in that was this was the last one we saw Paul Walker in.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think the
Yeah.
next one will have that kind of momentum because of that, but that's my opinion.
I honestly hope that the next one kills it. I want it to die. I want it to be done.
It was just such a great ending how they handled the Paul Walker character, and it kind of bookended the whole franchise. I'm kind of a little bit sad they're making another one, but money is there to be made. Do we have time for trailer discussion, Will, or not? Do we need to
Let's talk about the one that I'm least excited about, and that's it, which is Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's talk
Brad
about
was
that.
all depressed.
I wrote an article on Geeks with Wives about maybe I took the wrong approach by writing about Batman with firearms. Yes, everything in a trailer is out of the context of the film, so even though the Batwing looks like it's blowing henchmen to smithereens, maybe that's not Batman. Even though it looks like he's holding a sniper rifle, maybe that's a grappling gun, sure.
Yeah.
But what leads me to these assumptions in the first place is look at Man of Steel. We have this joyless Superman character who, and I realize Superman's had to kill characters in the comic books as far as especially superpowered beings, but our introduction to him, the first villain he fights, he's pushed to the point to where he levels an entire city and snaps Zod's neck, and then our introduction to Batman in this universe is, do you bleed? You will.
Yeah.
So, can there be an ounce of sunshine in this universe? I mean,
that's the thing that kills me the most about Superman is I think he can do Superman in the Superman style without it being cheesy. But Superman was more light. Yes, Batman was dark, which is why gritty Batman movies, they work.
Yeah.
They work. In fact, not doing Batman gritty enough does seem cheesy. Yeah. Whereas I don't think Superman should ever be so freaking gritty that they completely eliminate anything resembling a color palette from the damn movie.
There's no dynamic. Like, that relationship, which is one of the best in the history of comic books, is less interesting if they're both dark and gritty.
Yeah, it's supposed to be light and dark. They were supposed to be optimism, pessimism, it looks like they've eliminated that.
Talking about earlier with, it's either wisecracking versus grim and gritty, and I feel like there should be some light in the trailer, especially at the end. Like you're saying, with "Do you bleed? You will."
Yeah.
And I feel like that would be the perfect time for her to be like "Waka Waka" or something.
And then the little snippets we get of Wonder Woman, the little peeks we get at Wonder Woman, she was kind of more Superman side-ish when it came to gritty or not gritty. She was still a little more positive and colorful, and they've eliminated all color and what seems to be any ounce of positivity from her too. They've made her all gritty.
Their costumes are on tour, and the Wonder Woman costume looks a little brighter than it does from the posters and things like that.
But see, if that's the color, if that's the stuff they're doing though with the color palette and the camera, after post-production and all that stuff, if they're trying to make it so gritty, then whatever the costumes really look like isn't going to matter if they keep washing over everything with gray.
I understand Batman's there to hold him accountable, I believe, for the destruction at the end of Man of Steel. At least that feels like, and from what I've read and heard, how we're going to set this confrontation up. Yeah. But being the great detective that Batman is, I just can't see him jumping to the conclusion really quick that now I'm gonna deal out a ton of punishment towards Superman and make him bleed. Like, how does he get to that extreme?
My introduction to Batman was that he was the great detective, and he was actually pretty brightly colored himself at the time, but he was the great detective.
All right, Will, you hated it, I guess, too. Like, I didn't like it. What did you think?
I don't. Granted, I don't know in context to what any of those scenes are in that trailer, but I don't even want to see like even a snippet of Superman walking in a room and people are bowing before him. And I'm like, all right, that's it, done, done, bye. That's it.
I just hope they at least like put in like one Clark Kent joke.
Yeah, Man of Steel pretty much, was in my mind the worst iteration of Superman ever, and this, I mean, in my brain right now, this doesn't look like it's going to do any better for me, but I just have to wait and see.
DC, they're like, oh, it worked with Batman, we must be onto something, and it's like, it worked with Batman for a reason.
Yeah. Imagine if the second movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe would have been Civil War. These confrontations don't mean as much when we've never seen our heroes be heroic, right? Like Marvel built up to that. We're just being thrown into them making each other bleed.
I thought that was a weird choice. And for a while they wanted to remind people like, well, this isn't Superman 2. This isn't Superman 2. And I'm like, why don't you let a Superman 2 happen then?
Yeah. Exactly. Good point, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not excited about it, Brad, but we'll have to see, I guess.
I mean, it's Batman versus
I can already
Superman.
tell you I'm not paying like full price for this one. Unfortunately, I'm not.
But anyways, all right, guys. Well, we'll kind of since we're running a little over, we'll kind of skip final thought and just kind of close out with our Twitter. So, Brad, give us your Twitter, man, and Tell us what we should be reading by you on Geeks with Wives.
All right, you can find me on Twitter at the Real Brad Bell, REEL Brad Bell, and you can find my review up right now, Convergence #3, and also my entertainment editorial of how Zack Snyder might ruin Batman on Geeks.com. So read that, comment if you disagree or you agree, let me know. We love your feedback. If you're listening, and we know you are because you're tweeting us, comment on our articles. We'd appreciate it.
For sure. Awesome. Thanks, Brad. Miss Piper, what do you got?
You can find me at FizzGiggity on Twitter, which is probably easier to just search Piper and find the one that has an at FizzGiggity. Much better than me trying to spell it, because for some reason my friends are better at spelling my own at name than I am. Trolls more than welcome, because you're a hoot. Oh yeah.
You want to troll somebody? Troll Piper. Don't troll me. I don't
troll me. Yeah, I can handle it.
I don't handle that.
I have a bunch of editorials and stuff up on Geeks with Wives right now. I will soon have a comic and I will soon have a web comic about learning how to do comics on Geeks with Wives, as well as actual like reviews and shit. Holy crap! It's so great. I'm so excited. I get to review stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, Piper. Greg, tell us one more time where we can find your book and where to find you on Twitter.
All right. The book you can get at MichiganComicsCollective.org, and that's print and digital. And my handle on Twitter is Greg Henchman. And I've got Steve Bullitt as my avatar, holding his gun with his fedora and stubble and everything.
He looks pretty serious with that fedora and that stubble.
Yeah, it looks like serious business as I make, fart jokes on Twitter and stuff.
All right, May 15th. May 15th, people.
May 15th,
yeah. Wild Bullets.
Awesome.
Wild
Greg,
Bullets, check it out.
We look forward to reading that and your other projects, which all sound really great, and we can't wait to have you back to talk about that stuff too. So,
all right, thank you very much for having me as well. I appreciate it.
For sure. Thanks so much for being on, Greg. And as always, keep checking out geekswithwives.com for all your up-to-date comic reviews, editorials, opinion pieces, con wrap-ups. I just put up a lengthy, picture-heavy con wrap report from Celebration 7, and also my footage from the press conference of the Star Wars Rebels panel and press conference will be coming up soon, as well as the interviews with the folks from American Dad. Now that I'm done with conventions, will be all going up within the next week or two. So keep an eye out for that. As always, you can find me on Twitter at DarthSparrow. For the whole crew, for Brad, for Piper, for our guests, and of course Casey, who you'll see back next week, because I will be in Hollywood seeing Age of Ultron. So I'm excited about that.
I'll be gone doing my portfolio show, so it's going to be a very
All right.
Casey heavy show.
Got my tickets for the Friday show already, so I'm
Awesome.
excited.
You're awesome. We'll look forward to talking about that.
Spoil it. I am waiting until after I actually walk the graduation thingy.
All right, we won't spoil it, but I look forward to talking with all of you about that when we all can. So, as always, thank you for joining us this Thursday evening, and please stay tuned for the rest next time, and I will catch you on the Geek side.